first person to comment, "Bro finally remembered his channel password," is getting pinned, and I'm encouraging everybody to make fun of you. Anyway, a study performed in 1969 by then psychology student Edward Deci. Deci? Edward Dees had two groups of college students solve a series of puzzles with a soma cube. If you've never seen one, soma cubes are made out of a series of irregular shapes that can fit back together into a perfect cube, but they can also be reassembled into any number of shapes. Students in Group 1 were told that for every shape they were able to match, they'd each receive $1. And since this was 1969, $1 was worth about $740 with inflation. Don't look that up. Students in Group 2 were simply told to try to match as many shapes as they could without any sort of incentive. Which group do you think was the most productive here? The one that was actively being paid, or the one that was left to their own devices? We're going to come back to this in a sec, but before we do, I want to talk about birds. It's relevant, I swear. Students at the University of Oxford performed a study in the early 2000s to determine which animals were the best at using tools. Great apes, the group which humans are a member of, were ranked very highly, which really shouldn't come as too much of a surprise.
This old lady loves DIY.
But the real champions here were corvids, the group of birds that contain crows, magpies, ravens, the jet black ones that scream at you. This particular study focused on the New Caledonian crow, where they were presented with a small piece of meat in a clear tube that was just out of reach. The crows were able to not only select the right tool to fish it out, they were able to create tools by plucking twigs off of branches or bending pieces of wire into little hooks. In a different study, researchers at the Universities of York and St. Andrews found that birds with similar levels of intelligence would continue to explore and play with the tools even after eating the meat, indicating that they're motivated by their own curiosity. So the food incentives were only really needed to pique their interest. Humans are a little more complicated than birds, which brings us back to the college students and the soma cubes. 12 students across two groups were given 13 minutes to reassemble their soma cubes into a specific shape. Members of Group 1 received $1 for each shape they were able to match in time, where Group 2 wasn't given any incentive. After the tests were completed, the administrator told the students he'd be back in a few minutes and casually left the room. This is the part of the experiment I'm the most interested in. The students were monitored to see what they would do when, from their perspective, they didn't have to do anything. Every single member of Group 2 continued to experiment with the soma cube, trying to match more shapes from the test, some even after they were told they could go home. But there wasn't a single member of Group 1 to show interest in the soma cube, at least not outside of mindlessly fidgeting with it once the promise of $1 was off the table. The administrator was only gone for 8 minutes, and during that time they either went through the magazines they were provided with or sat there and daydreamed. It was the exact opposite behavior of the birds. Providing a piece of food piqued their interest, then their own curiosity kept them engaged. And while a monetary incentive got humans to engage with the puzzle, it seemed to make them less curious once they were finished. The reason I bring this up is because of the fascinating question it begs about puzzle games. How does a designer pique a player's interest in a way that actually works? How do you motivate a player's curiosity? Do you remember that month back in 2022 when, everybody did Wordle? Something about guessing the correct sequence of letters collectively made our monkey brains light up like we accomplished something. Which, to be clear, this is nothing, and I know that, but it still feels great to give myself a win before I get out of bed every morning. And then I started thinking about why, and it all comes back to this tweet I saw a few months ago. A major issue with video games is that they produce a bunch of people who consider themselves brain geniuses for solving problems that were designed to be solvable. As a remedy, we should be making more games that are actively and irreconcilably hostile to the player. Thank you. I'm not going to get into that second sentence, but the first one raises a pretty interesting point. Most puzzle games are easy to write off as nothing more than a fun little time waster, and in a lot of cases that's true. Your phone's app store is overflowing with brain rot brain teasers, and you've probably seen an ad for one within the past week. They don't require any real effort. They mostly exist to pass the time for 15 minutes so you aren't left alone with your own thoughts while you poop. But a good puzzle game is designed to make the player feel clever. Your brain is hardwired to reward creative problem solving, even fake problems that you know already have a solution. This might come as a bit of a surprise, but crows aren't the only species that are capable of using tools. It's thought that humans have been making those things for about as long as they've been making humans. Part of the success of our entire species was in the way our ancient ancestors saw real, life-threatening problems and overcame them with creative solutions. When I say that Wordle lights up a part of your monkey brain, I do mean that very literally. That Eureka moment is an actual, measurable, neurological reflex. If you've ever been banging your head against a wall trying to solve some seemingly impossible problem, you're probably familiar with that aha moment. A burst of this feeling that, oh, I got it. You might actually be wrong, but that revelation is a wonderful feeling. Researchers were able to identify and measure the spikes in brain activity associated with what they call insight, which, quote, refers to the sudden revelation of how to solve a problem. Insight problems typically present unclear information that may lead to inappropriate solutions or to no solution at all. The solver feels that the problem is unsolvable. The sudden realization of a path to a quick solution generates a surprise effect accompanied by complete confidence that the solution is indeed correct. And that is exactly how puzzle games hack your brain. Thanks for watching. If you're one of the 30 people that still plays Wordle every morning, first of all, respect. The reason that game is so addicting, at least for me, is that it's usually able to trigger a Eureka moment without requiring too much effort from my very sleepy brain. So how does it do that? Well, this is going to be a problem. Almost paradoxically, Wordle is actively guiding you toward the correct answer by providing little pieces of insight as you make progress. You're not just blindly entering in a bunch of random crap. I mean, maybe that's how you've been playing, I don't know, your life. You submit guesses by typing in any 5-letter word, and the game will respond by color-coding the letters once you hit enter. Gray means they aren't used anywhere. So, okay, yes, that answer could not have been less correct, but it gave me a ton of info to work with. Every word needs a vowel, and since this one doesn't use A, I, O, or U, my next guess is at least going to need an E. Yellow means the letter is used somewhere in the word, but not where you put it. My next guess should have E, S, and T, but I'll need to make sure they're all in different spots, which... Okay, what am I supposed to do with these? Lastly, green means you got the right letter in the right place. So with all the info I have now, I went from thousands of possible answers down to a small handful with just 3 guesses. The on-screen keyboard color codes the letters in the exact same way as up here, but it only serves as a polite reminder. It's not going to stop me from using any of them. It will, however, stop me from entering PIF, since it'll only accept valid words that aren't proper nouns. Such as spelt. Eureka. What makes for a satisfying puzzle will always come back to the way people think. It's as much psychology as it is game design. A developer's goal should be to make players feel like they cracked it on their own, even if they were quietly being nudged in the right direction from start to finish. But I wouldn't really say that Wordle counts as helping the player. The feedback isn't there to give you a little hint, it's providing you with the necessary context you need to get to the solution. The game is never going to go, "Psst, you haven't tried a U yet." There is a particularly infamous puzzle in The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess that most people seem to hate. Not because it's bad or unfair, but it comes completely out of the blue and it's placed right before one of the most pivotal story moments of the game. Twilight Princess normally plays like this, so completely halting your momentum for gameplay that looks like this, with no way to skip it, was understandably pretty frustrating for a lot of players. Once they finally beat it, they were rewarded with the Master Sword, one of the icons of the franchise, and a moment that the game spent a long time hyping up. But the Master Sword was never seen as an incentive for solving this puzzle. The puzzle was just an obstacle stopping players from getting to the sword. Coming back to the Soma Cubes, I think there's a pretty good reason the students who were being paid lost interest so quickly. That aha moment can be extremely rewarding, and it's one of the reasons we love problem solving so much. But in order to experience that feeling, the problem solvers need to be invested in the solution itself. Providing an incentive for success, $1, inherently creates a punishment for failure, not getting the $1, which is going to take mental precedent over whatever natural curiosity they might have originally had. Curiosity is an emotion, and it's not like you can incentivize somebody to change the way they feel. I'm so sorry. I just heard you're grieving the loss of a loved one, but let's see what Alexander Hamilton has to say about that. What are you gonna do? Cry about it? Gonna poop your pants? Gonna poop your pants and then cry in that order? Dude, that's not okay. Somebody died. Huh? If you ask me, this concept is pretty genius, and I'd definitely play an entire game with levels that followed this design structure. In retrospect. But if you asked 12-year-old Cameron if he wanted more of it, he'd probably look at you like this. In another Nintendo game, Super Mario 3D World, they introduced a series of optional puzzle levels where you play as Captain Toad, a character who can't jump in a Mario game. But funnily enough, most players, myself included, consider these sections to be a highlight of the title thanks to their truly brilliantly designed puzzle platforming combo. And since they were optional, players saw them as a nice little change of pace instead of a mandatory diversion. Remember that thing I said about 43 seconds ago about playing an entire game that followed the design structure of the thing from the Zelda thing? Well, Nintendo made a spin-off game called Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, which expanded on this concept and went on to sell over 2 million copies. It just goes to show that if you want to motivate a player's curiosity, there are definitely wrong ways to do it. Problem solving on its own is usually pretty satisfying, which is why we create fake problems in the form of video games. But just being a problem isn't enough in its own right. You need to be invested in the solution, and you need to know that it's even possible. I'll care about the solution to a problem for about as long as it feels like something I could do on my own. The second I realize it's not is the second it stops being fun. Like, if I get a flat tire in the middle of the road, I'm not gonna think, yippee, a problem for me to solve. The reality is that my day is ruined and now I'm out a couple $100. For a problem to be a puzzle, it has to at least appear solvable, which means it's got to provide enough guidance, but not so much that you lose out on that insight. It is a delicate balancing act. So, if a puzzle game is quietly helping you the entire time, how does it make players feel like they solved it on their own? Superliminal is an incredibly surreal puzzle game that's all about scale and perspective, and the whole thing takes place in an induced lucid dream.
Technology provides safe and effective dream therapy while you rest in the comfort of our flagship.
Think Inception, not Wizard of Oz. Superliminal throws you right into the thick of things and without a single word of explanation requires the player to figure everything out on their own. At least, that's how it feels. Just because players aren't told what to do with words doesn't mean they aren't being deliberately guided by an invisible hand. Really, that's the key difference between instruction, something this game has very little of, and direction. Instructions are clearly defined and tell you exactly what to do or how to do something. A particularly extreme example would be in Project Zomboid. That game's opening tutorial holds your hand and will not let go of it until you've been fully instructed. Time to take off those training wheels, lady. Close the character panel by clicking the cross, and we'll move on to the next exciting. It's looking at stuff. Woo! Oh yeah, baby. Training wheels are off. Let's get some blood pumping, but first, you need to walk into the other room. Wow, great job, you just walked into a room! This goes on for like 10 minutes. I know it's not a puzzle game, it's just... This is maybe the most obnoxious tutorial I've ever seen. In Superliminal, the occasional disembodied voice will chime in to provide little tidbits about the story, but they never actually tell you to do anything. In fact, the only time I'm aware of that you're told what to do is this piece of paper that says perception is reality with the word grab underneath. That's it. And once you pick it up, this happens. However big or small an object appears to be, however far away from you it is, you can just reach out and grab it. Whatever space it occupied in your field of view becomes reality as soon as you pick it up or set it back down. Which can be a little confusing at first, and it might not be obvious to new players that they can scale objects in either direction. That's why the only way forward is blocked by a giant chess piece that you'll need to shrink. This is an unspoken direction. I don't need some cutesy little raccoon thing to pop on screen and tell me how to do literally everything. Directions are closer to a set of guidelines because you're not being told what to do or how to do it, you're just being pointed in a general direction. This can be represented through visual cues, the placement of objects, or any number of ways to draw your eyes towards something important. Since the beginning of the game is structured like a sandbox, it uses direction to quietly teach players how to teach themselves. The very next room is filled with stuff, and almost none of it serves a purpose, except to let you have some fun playing around with the main mechanic. Now, why does that sound familiar? A technique you'll use throughout the rest of the game is scaling an object so you can climb on top of it, and it's no mistake that the only way out of this room requires you to do that exact thing. You're never told how to do it, but thanks to some clear direction based on where they put the door, that's a pretty natural conclusion to come to. In fact, they don't even need to tell you how to jump on the block, because if we rewind back to the hallway that led you in here, there's a seemingly pointless pile of boxes that already taught you how to do it. If this method of self-motivated teaching feels at all familiar, it's because the designers took a lot of inspiration from another dimension-bending first-person 3D puzzle game, Portal. Portal? That is a weird word to say with an American accent. Anyway, Portal opens with your character waking up from a pod in a sealed glass room. One of the first things you'll see is a ticking timer counting down from a minute, so you quickly understand that you'll be waiting for a little bit before anything happens. With nothing else to do, most players will become pretty familiar with the contents of this room, which is weirdly kind of important. Then after the timer hits 0, the portal opens and you see somebody on the other side. When you walk towards yours, she walks towards hers. Anything you do, she does. That's you. The entire game is centered around this mechanic, and in 2007, nobody had ever seen anything quite like it. In the game's developer commentary, they went over just how critical this moment was to get right. Beginning players often thought portals took them into other spaces or even other dimensions. To help fight that notion, we start players in a visually unique room with memorable objects, so when they walk through a portal for the first time, they have a clear point of reference, which communicates the idea that they're still in the same basic location. For instance, the radio, which helps as well by providing some audio continuity. Because you're so familiar with the inside of this box, it becomes that much more obvious when you're looking at it from the outside. Without using a single word, the designers were able to teach players a surprisingly complicated concept in an instant. These kinds of games require you to think. That's sort of their whole appeal. So designers can't just assume the player is stupid and painstakingly walk them through everything they'll ever need to know. But at the same time, you can't expect somebody to solve a problem if they don't even know what the problem is. The first puzzle of Portal is the perfect pivot point between pampering the player and presenting the problems they'll pursue as they progress. Step on this big red button, the door opens. Take a step off, and the door is closed again. So you weigh it down, and your brain expands. Most people don't spend more than a few seconds in here before they realize what they're supposed to do, but an overlooked aspect of why this is so intuitive comes down to the timing. The cube pops out from this chute on a small delay right after you walk into the room, which naturally draws your attention to it and indicates it's something you can use. Direction, not instruction. Now, I've played the 2 Portal games for an embarrassing number of hours, so the best way to showcase just how well this game teaches you to teach yourself is by watching other people's first time playing it. In Megmage's playthrough, you can watch her think through all the steps I mentioned in real time. See the big red button, watch the cube fall after a small delay, then use it to hold the door open. Jewel, unsurprisingly, had a nearly identical experience.
Okay, press button. Put. Drop, perfect.
Superliminal has essentially the exact same puzzle, but there's a twist. Stepping on the button opens up the door, but there's nothing obvious you can use to hold it open until you shift your perspective just slightly to see the wooden block. As simple as this little moment is, it reinforces 3 design concepts at the same time. Number 1, if you can interact with an object, the distance doesn't matter. You can always interact with it. Number 2, you won't always know where that object is going to be. Sometimes you're going to have to look for it. Number 3, not every object can be interacted with. When you try to get to the door on the other side of the room, you might try to use this cart to climb up, but that doesn't work. So you turn around to grab the block, which reinforces concepts 1 and 2. Oh, and I guess number 4 is that buttons do stuff. It's safe to assume that the average player isn't going to hyperanalyze such an inconsequential moment like they're some kind of a nerd writing a video essay, but that's because they really don't have to. Check out this clip from Remote Bry's playthrough, which, just to clarify, I did not watch until after I wrote this.
Aw. Ding. What? So no objects beyond this point. Do they mean that, or... Oh, I have to grab that and then put you there? So we have to go up there. So all we have to do is grab this table. Oh no, we grab the... Wow. Make it bigger. I think that's big enough.
The human brain is pretty great at pattern recognition, so most people pick up on important details without even realizing it. For example, the first thing you'll notice as you walk into this dimly lit room is that it's dimly lit. Broken pattern number 1. It's not just a stylistic choice, it's directing your attention toward the only source of illumination, the crooked exit sign, which is broken pattern number 2. As you look around the room for anything you could use to weigh down these 2 buttons, this just kinda makes sense. But the reason it makes sense is because everything here is pretty clearly telegraphed. The lighting, the sign, the spacing of the buttons, everything is designed to guide you to the solution. I realize this is still the beginning of the game, but how do you help your players without just giving them the answer? Return of the Obra Dinn puts you in the shoes of an insurance investigator for the East India Trading Company in the year 1807. Sounds fun, I know. The titular cargo ship Obra Dinn went missing after its expedition to South Africa 5 years earlier and mysteriously drifted its way back to the coast of the British Isles without a single living person on board. You're armed with the memento mortem. Mortum. Stupid American accent. It's Latin for memory of death, and when activated at the site of somebody's remains, this pocket watch will take you into a frozen-in-time tableau of the moment of their death. But before you're shown anything, you'll hear the final few seconds the victim could hear from their perspective. The gameplay and narrative are tightly connected in Return of the Obra Dinn, which means it is a particularly spoilable game. The last thing I'd want to do is ruin the experience for anybody, so aside from the opening 15 minutes, which I will be covering in detail, everything else will be as story-light as possible. But ignoring spoilers, the primary mechanic of the game is investigating a series of deaths by stepping into the exact moment they happened. So the story of the Obra Dinn can get a little gruesome at times. If you're sensitive to that sort of thing, or if there are little kids in the room. Alrighty, still here? Cool. The main goal in Return of the Obra Dinn is to discover the fate of all 60 missing crew members and passengers, which serves as one giant deductive reasoning puzzle. You're provided with a ship's manifest that has a list of names, job titles, and countries of origin, along with 3 sketches that depict every known member that was aboard the ship when it went missing. None of the names in this list are attached to the people depicted in these drawings, so the only way to determine who everybody was is by using what little information you could glean from their final moments.
Captain! Open the door!
So the guy who opened the door is probably the captain. That much is obvious. Everybody featured in these memories will be highlighted in the drawing automatically, and aside from what we can see in the snapshot, that's the only info we'll be working with. So I'll enter that whoever this was shot with a gun by Captain Robert Witterell. With this memory, I can determine 1 cause of death and 1 person's name, but that leaves me with 3 incomplete entries. I got 2 important details about these 2 people, but absolutely nothing about the 3rd guy. In the following memory, the captain slices another crew member's throat. In the next, he bonked a guy on the noggin real hard. We're up to 3 people who died in different ways, all killed by the captain, but their identities are still a complete mystery. And this is the tutorial, which is already starting to feel like a little bit too much info to keep track of. Until we enter the next memory, which is where everything starts to come together.
Abigail, your brother, my friend, I shot him dead. I'll be with you Soon, my love.
Of the 3 people the captain killed, other than, the captain, only one of them was shot, which means that first guy is the brother of Abigail. If we open the ship's manifest and look for her, we'll see the surname Witterell. So we know that Abigail is the wife of Captain Robert Witterell. If we assume that her middle name, Hoskett, is her maiden name, then her brother, the victim in the first memory, would be William Hoskett, the first mate. Eureka after Eureka. This is the core gameplay loop in Return of the Obra Dinn. As you encounter a body somewhere on the ship, you'll enter the memory of their death, which provides little slivers of information about the people on the ship. And over the course of the next few hours, you'll start to spin a web that connects memory to memory and paints a clearer picture of what exactly happened here and who everybody is. The first handful of tableaus are just there to show you the ropes, which is why I felt comfortable spoiling them like that. Those are all freebies. But as we progress, the difficulty starts to ramp up, and you can't expect everybody's deaths to be so informative. This guy was obviously killed in a cannon misfire, but aside from that, there's hardly any useful info. Theoretically, I could just go through and try guessing every single name over and over and over until I get it right, but the designer thought about that, which is why guesses are confirmed in groups of 3. I'll need to enter 3 correct identities and causes of death before it will confirm them, which effectively makes the brute force method mathematically impossible. However, if you're hung up on an incorrect piece of information, nothing is going to tell you that you're wrong. Return of the Obra Dinn does not hold your hand, and this might sound a little unfair, but it does throw you a couple bones to make sure it isn't. The first is that it stops you from making premature guesses. As you scroll through the logbook, some of these faces are blurred, which means you haven't seen all the memories you need to identify them. But that same restriction provides a very helpful hint when it finally gets removed. Unblurring a face is basically saying that the last memory had some critical information about this person, so if you didn't figure it out, try taking another look. The second are these little markers above each person's portrait, showing you how difficult it'll be to determine their identity. If I covered any specific examples, that brings us into spoiler territory, but just the knowledge that this one is especially challenging is enough to get me focusing on the easier ones until I feel ready. A lot of the game is just spent gathering intel, and once you start to understand what is and isn't being asked of you as a player, these tableaus stop feeling like an onslaught of information and turn into relevant pieces of the bigger picture. The constant question is, okay, who is this guy? But to get to the answer, you'll need to start asking some very specific questions of your own. Once you know what details to look out for, or more specifically, what questions to ask, these level 3 portraits become significantly less intimidating. Oh no, sponsorship horse. What happened?
I died. Of cringe.
Ah, dang. You gonna be okay?
No, I said I died.
Did you just die again?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, but what happened?
Not enough people went to gamersubs.gg/gamewing to get 10% off. Wait, maybe it's 10%. I'll have to double check.
The Federal
on
Trade
that.
Commission legally requires me to disclose that this is a paid advertisement for the sponsor of this video, GamerSubs. Okay, so how did you actually die, though?
I don't know, man. You're the one with the magic stopwatch.
You mean pocket
No,
watch?
it's a stopwatch.
You actually dead this time?
Safety.
Yeah, I'm just gonna ignore that. I guess it's time to see what happened here.
Oh, it appears my heart has stopped.
Oh, silly sponsorship horse. In addition to vitamin C, D2, B6, B12, and its proprietary nootropic blend, one scoop of GamerSubs has 100 milligrams of caffeine. And there are 100 servings per canister. Dude, this is empty. You had 10,000 milligrams of caffeine. But who can blame him? With flavors like pina colada, black cherry, strawberry lemonade, blue. This one's just called good. It's about 40 cents per scoop, which is a heck of a lot cheaper than canned energy drinks. So if you want to save some money and support the channel while doing it, go to gamersubs.gg/camwing to get 10% off your order. Oh, hey there, little guy. Baba Is You is a game about rules, and like any other self-respecting puzzle game, its introductory levels are just there to teach you how to play. The rules themselves are quite literally spelled out in front of you in the form of these blocks. Baba Is You means that when you move the thumbstick, the only instruction on screen, you move Baba, which is this little guy. You can probably already tell what the rules wall is stop, rock is push, and flag is win are going to do, so here's where things get a little funky. Are these rules instructions or directions? Let's take a look at the next level. Baba is surrounded by wall, and we already know that wall is stop, but check this out. Oh, hang on, why can't I? If it wasn't clear what just happened, wall is no longer stop. And when U, which represents the player, is set to nothing, as you can imagine, things get pretty complicated pretty quickly. As the levels go up, so do the number of rules. So the challenge comes from which ones you're able to change and which ones are walled off. In level 3, Baba will always be you and wall will always be stop. Your interactions are limited to rock is push and flag is win. I'm not really sure what water is sink means yet, but thankfully you can always undo your most recent move, which opens this game up for experimentation. You don't have to be so worried about the consequences for failure anymore, which is a great way to motivate a player's curiosity and allows them to think more like a programmer than a player. If you're already in the world of software engineering, these kinds of puzzles will probably start to click from the very beginning. On the flip side of this, if you want to get into software engineering, Baba Is You is a great exercise to get yourself in the right headspace. The game is constantly training you to think in the way it wants you to think. In the introductory level 0, flag is win by default, but you could set it to rock is win, or wall is win, or heck, just slide is win underneath Baba. Multiply that out by all 4 objects, and there are at least 16 different ways to finish this level, possibly more. You might think a game engine this freeform is a recipe for disastrous level design, but the most genius part is in the way each level limits what you're able to change. The game will encapsulate certain rules behind walls, not to stop you from cheating, but by creating a correct way to win. Every puzzle, not just the ones in this game, are a series of questions looking for a series of answers. But first, the player has to figure out what questions are even being asked. That can be just as big a part of the puzzle as anything else. To see what I mean by that, let's jump forward to level 6. Also, spoiler warning for level 6, I guess. With any well-designed puzzle, even a particularly difficult one, once you know the question you're trying to answer, it's just a matter of working your way from there. We know that flag is win, so that's where we're going to try to go. The question is, how do we get there? The skulls here will... No, wait. Okay, so walls are stop, which means the only thing I can really do in here is turn that rule off. So what can I do now? Rock is stopping me from modifying anything in here, so that leaves... Wait. Oh, no. Okay, I get it. Wait. Guys, I don't think this is possible. Now you're thinking with portals, TM isn't just a catchy marketing tagline, it's how you're supposed to play. Just like Baba Is You, the easier problems might not be the most stimulating, but they exist to make sure that you're asking the right questions. Portal gives you a gun that shoots portals. Shoot point A over here and come out of point B over here. That's not an easy concept to grasp, especially in a first-person perspective. So to help players learn, the early levels will set point B in a fixed location, which limits the player to placing a single portal. In this level, they'll use it to get across 2 gaps. Getting halfway across is easy enough, but the blue portal is where you went in, and the orange portal is where you came out, which kinda makes doing this feel like you're going backwards to go forwards. If you've played the game before, you won't even register this as a puzzle, but that's because you already know how they want you to think. Most brand new players are still thinking in an order that Portal doesn't really follow. This clicked with Jewel almost immediately.
Mine's a gap. Orange, blue.
Mapoko, Mapok, Australian Kratos was able to figure this out because of the subtle direction these cameras provide. They're fun to knock off the wall, which is why there's one here, and here, and here.
We're not being watched. The chairs are empty, but there's seemingly an AI being spoken through the...
To ensure the safe performance of all authorized activities, do not destroy vital testing apparatus.
I didn't think that was gonna work.
For your own safety, do not destroy vital testing apparatus.
Oh, okay. So if I put the portal there and then go through here, I'll be over the other side.
Well done.
Okay. Let me get rid of you.
Do not destroy vital testing
What are you gonna do about it?
Since the mysterious voice provides feedback that says,
Stop it.
Machi thought he was being an agent of chaos, breaking the rules, which accidentally pointed him to the solution.
Oh, okay. I just go up here.
But as we know by this point, nah, man, I wanted you to do that. Anyway, I'm gonna die. Portal 2 is several times longer than the first game thanks to its myriad of new mechanics, and starting off, their introduction is just there to motivate a player's curiosity, so the game will never actually tell you how they work.
I'll start getting everything else working while you perform this first simple test, which involves deadly lasers and how test subjects react when locked in a room with deadly lasers.
And as the old adage says, you can lead a horse to water, but if you shoot them with deadly lasers, then they'll probably die. Which is another way of saying show, don't tell. The main point of this chamber is to teach you that lasers need to connect with a receiver. So you put one portal here, and another portal here, and voila! The lift to the exit door is leaving without you, so you'll move one of your portals, stand on the platform, then put it back. Not only did you learn about this new test element, you also understand that puzzles in this game have a specific order you'll need to follow, which they can use to turn up the difficulty.
This next test involves discouragement redirection cubes.
The word redirection here is a little bit of a hint, but that's all it is. Instead of providing instruction on how the cube works, the laser is pointed at a surface that you can't place a portal on. This directs players to an area of the chamber that they can't just walk into, so they'll either need to do this, or this, which is an important concept to understand. Using the cube to connect the laser to the receiver will make the stairs appear, but now you have to weigh down the button, and the only cube in here is redirecting the laser, which means you can't carry it up the stairs. So my brain is expanding.
Well done. Here comes.
All the games I've talked about up to this point have had a pretty clear order of operations. There's a consistent logic to the way these puzzles are designed. But there exists another kind of puzzle game, a genre dominated by lawlessness and chaos. Riddles. Or more specifically, lateral thinking problems, like the kind in, like in old school point and click games. Put up the chapter thing. A box without hinges, key, or lid, yet inside golden treasure is hid. This is a famous riddle from J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, and at the risk of being killed by a group of angry nerds in the comment section, it is, in my opinion, bad. It's bad. When I say the word box, you're probably going to think of a box, like a cube. So what is a box without hinges, key, or lid? And I'll just tell you, it's an egg. Get it? Egg. If you didn't already know the answer, you probably got hung up on the box part, because that's what the riddle was describing. You would have to be an insane person to think of this as a box, but that's just kind of how riddles work. If it was rephrased as a container without hinges, key, or lid, yet inside golden treasure is hid, I think most people would get there pretty quickly. But that's not the goal. Riddles are usually supposed to be a little bit obtuse. Which brings us to lateral thinking problems, which are kind of like a hybrid of riddle and puzzle. You'd see these in a lot of point-and-click adventure games like the kind Sierra and LucasArts were famous for in the 80s and 90s, or the genre that Telltale oversaturated the market with and then died in the noughties. The oddies? The 2000s, you know what I'm talking about. LucasArts' The Curse of Monkey Island from 1997 uses lateral thinking for pretty much every single one of its puzzles. The most obvious solution is very rarely the correct one. If the problem exists within a certain frame of reference, like inside of this box, the solution is over here somewhere. The game opens with your character, Guybrush Threepwood, mighty pirate, TM, held captive on a ghost ship manned by the undead. So the very first section of the game requires you to escape and introduces you to Monkey Island's particular brand of cartoon logic. As a self-described mighty pirate, instead of relying on combat, problems are solved with your wits. You find yourself locked in this tiny room with this tiny pirate. The most obvious way out of here would be to overpower him fairly easily, take the gun, and shoot the lock. But this is a cartoon, so instead you'll need to highlight the insecurities of the pipsqueak pirate holding you hostage until he has an emotional breakdown.
You're a failure as a pirate.
Shut your trap, you yellow...
Now that he's busy, you can use the cannon to blow up the rowboats of some undead crewmen. Now, why would I do that? I don't know, man. It's fun to blow up skeletons. Don't think about it too much. And hey, look at that. One of their swords coincidentally floated towards this window, so now you just need to fish it out.
I can't reach that far.
In order to reach the sword, you'll need to stick this plastic hook that Wally dropped onto the end of the ramrod. Then just cut the tether on the cannon loose and blast open the door. Should that have killed you? Yeah, probably. But again, cartoon logic. This causes the captain of the ghost ship to drop his big, spooky voodoo cannonball, which explodes, and then... Okay, yeah, that definitely should have killed you, right? But thanks to the power of cartoons, you're perfectly safe in the structurally reinforced cargo hold. The ship may be upside down, but there's a hole in the hole, so you cut a hole in this porthole to raise the water level, and you're out of there. Hole. Hooray! That was extremely easy and straightforward. If it's any indication, this was the tutorial, so you can expect things will get much, much stupider from here on out. A lateral thinking problem requires you to reframe your perspective, because what sounds like it should be correct is very rarely what is correct. These kinds of point-and-click games are famously obtuse. That's a big part of the appeal for fans of the genre. The Curse of Monkey Island definitely has its fair share of why would I ever think to try that puzzles, but when you start thinking laterally, the way the game wants you to think, some of the most unhinged solutions become pretty intuitive. Like putting chicken grease on a cannonball to interrupt a stage play for some monkeys so you can steal a shovel. It actually makes perfect sense in context, and that's kind of the thing. There's context. The storytelling and dialogue serve as the direction you need to start making these kinds of decisions. As illogical as the solutions are, the cartoonish nature of the world directs you to try things that you wouldn't necessarily expect to work. That invisible guiding hand is still very much a part of the experience. And unfortunately, for as much love as I give the opening minutes of Superliminal, it makes the switch from logic to lateral thinking in a way that really does not work well. I still think this game is worth playing, but just know it's got a lot of problems. For every puzzle that triggers a Eureka moment, there are about as many that make you feel stupid. They're basically just riddles at a certain point. Oh, and it goes without saying that I'll be spoiling some stuff, so feel free to skip this part if you still want to go in blind. The first time Superliminal simultaneously blew me away and kind of made me a little mad is when you walk into this room. The narrator explains that there's supposed to be an elevator to take you out of here, but for some reason it isn't there. At this point, it isn't entirely clear what the puzzle even is, which becomes a bit of a recurring theme throughout the rest of the game. Remember that room from earlier with the crooked exit sign? There was just enough telegraphing that you intuitively understood what to do, but it relied on your pattern recognition. There were plenty of other exit signs before then, which helped you to understand why that one was different. Well, the solution here is to do this. And yeah, admittedly, this is pretty awesome, but it's also the first and only time you'll ever see the moon in this game. There's not really any broken pattern to guide you to this decision. Well, okay, aside from the one window in the roof that's propped open. If you don't immediately notice that, there are paintings of the moon all over the walls, except you've never had to pay attention to paintings before, so you probably won't notice those either. There is, technically speaking, enough direction to guide you through this one, but I definitely wouldn't blame you for being completely stumped. And yeah, this is really neat, but does it even count as a puzzle? They aren't really presenting a problem for you to solve, and the solution is to just guess that something was clickable. Superliminal is constantly introducing new mechanics to try to get you to think laterally instead of logically. The game takes place in a lucid dream, so I can understand why they designed it that way, but the problem is that it very frequently fails to prime its players for the new concepts it introduces. This is chapter 2 of 9, which sets the precedent pretty early on that you'll have to ask not what you're supposed to do, but what you're even able to do in the first place. Granted, that isn't always a problem. Figuring out how things are supposed to work is a big piece of the puzzle in games like Portal and Baba Is You. But those games provide introductions to their mechanics in a way where you're required to interact with them. So even if you don't immediately solve the puzzle, you at least understand what the new thing does. In Superliminal, new mechanics are frequently thrown at the player without any kind of introduction and then abandoned shortly after, leaving players more confused than satisfied when they manage to figure it out. There's no Eureka moment. It's more of a, that didn't feel like the correct solution, but okay, did that actually work? And it's a shame, because these are the kinds of problems that could be fixed pretty easily without changing too much. I really wish they took more inspiration from Portal, because the design of that game proves that a tiny bit of priming can go a really long way. Jump scare! Jump scare! Yeah, babe, get off of... Okay, so I had every intention of animating this outro, but earlier this week I woke up and I just couldn't close my mouth. Like my mouth, the jaw just wouldn't close. So I went to the hospital. Some doctors touched my face. Now I can close my mouth again. But the important thing is I'm on drugs right now. Sorry this video took so long. If that outro feels a little abrupt, it's because I was originally going to go through and show some additional examples of puzzles that kind of had the same shortcomings that Superliminal had, and then I realized that, like, it's just complaining. So YouTube is not my full-time job. I've been chipping away at this video for the past 5 to 6 months. Really should not have taken that long. Anyway, massive thank you to my patrons who stuck around during the, 10-month drought. I will do my best to make sure that that does not happen again. Probably you're going to be seeing some of them, like, up here in those guys. And then the other ones... If you want to see more videos more frequently, while also having, like, a product that you can mix with water and then consume, and then get caffeine, consider going to gamersubs.gg/camwing. Sorry about all the hentai. We're going to be doing a behind-the-scenes live stream at some point in the month of December. I'm going to be going through the blend files and the DaVinci Resolve timeline to kind of show off some of the cool VFX stuff that we did. If you've ever wanted an opportunity to see how we make stuff and to ask questions, make sure to join for that. Whenever that is. I'll make a community post about it at least a couple days in advance. If you don't look at YouTube on your phone, you probably won't see the community post. And that sucks. Thanks for your patience, gamers. I'm gonna try to never do a thing that takes this long ever again. Cause I'm real sleepy. Don't know what this voice is. Sorry for this whole outro. This was a bad idea.